this segment, we're going to take a look at the Create Shapes Freehand tool, and that's found over here on the left-hand toolbar. And what I want to show first of all is that this tool has several options. So I'll just click on the tool and hold, and you can see that the tool flies open, and we have several choices. And the first one is called Create Freehand Shapes. And then beside that we have Create Bezier Shapes, and then we have Create Outline Shape, and then we have Create Crystal Shape. And this is for placing individual crystals, and I'm going to show all of these, how to use all of these different tools here in this segment. And we'll start with the first one, the Create Freehand Shapes. So I'll just go ahead and select that. Now, I can simply left click and drag to draw a shape. Now, as I draw this shape, the computer will follow my mouse and create the points that are needed to define this shape. Now, if I let go right here, I created an open shape. It's not actually closed. It has two ends to it, and therefore it could only be created with an outline. It couldn't be filled in. Now, I can complete the shape. Even though I let go, I could still come back to one of these endpoints and then click and drag to finish the shape, at which point you can tell it's become a closed shape because it also gets the filled in color of the light blue with the dark blue, which is my default colors that comes up. Now, if you'll notice, when I selected this tool, that my mouse became this sort of little bit of a drawing shape mouse. And even though I've drawn this shape, I haven't actually completed creating it until I right click. That completes making the shape and makes this object selectable. And I still have the drawing tool. In other words, I could draw another shape right now if I wanted to, but I need to right click to complete that. And so now if I go up to my selection tool, and maybe I'll just choose the rectangle selection tool, you'll notice I could select on these objects just by clicking on them. Now, the reason I go over this right clicking part is, let's move over. If I choose the tool again, and let's just say I draw myself a shape, and then I draw myself another shape, but I didn't right click in between. Now if I right click now, you'll notice that the two shapes are kind of like they're married, or they've been joined together. They become one selectable object that are at the same, they've been combined in a way. So just as an example to show you how you can see that they're combined, I mean, other than the fact that if I try and select one of them, they both become selected. But because these shapes have, well, they have a blue run stitch outline on them. And you can see here that because they're considered one continuous shape, even though I drew two shapes, you can see the run stitch outline that has found the kind of closest point between those shapes to connect together. So they're really considered a connected, two shapes that are connected. Maybe you want to call it married or joined or whatever. So that's how it works. Now, again, when I use this freehand tool, if I draw a shape, gotta grab the tool. If I draw a shape and I don't close it, it becomes a line. I could add more lines if I wanted to. I could draw a whole bunch of lines here, anywhere I want to, and when I right click now, all of those lines become joined together, just like they did with the closed shapes. So the idea is you can create an open shape or a closed shape. The difference is an open shape will only have outlines. It's not possible to add a fill or it only has the outline option for the open shape. And the difference between an open shape and a closed shape means when I draw the shape, if I connect the ends together, then it becomes a closed shape. So that's the main difference. And again, you can draw as many shapes as you want, both open and closed. And then when you right click, that little group becomes joined together. So that's the freehand shape tool, and basically you click and drag to create these shapes, and you can control the smoothness level, but you don't actually input the individual points that are used to create these shapes. The software makes those for us. We just click and drag to create the shape. Now, if I move along on the toolbar to the next option, which is the Bezier tool, so I'll go ahead and select my Bezier tool. Now this time it's a little bit different. I still draw the shape, but in this case, if I just click once, you'll see that I've started my shape and I get kind of a dotted line that is connected to the point that I just put in. And if I wanted to, I could add more points, so I'll just keep clicking. Click, left click. And so it's not click and drag, it's simply click. And you'll notice that all of my points are corner points. Now, I can make curved points, and to get the point to curve, what I need to do is click and drag. And now you can see that when I'm dragging, see, I'm still clicking, I haven't let go yet, I get these arrows that come. And these arrows, you can see how the arrows are affecting the line before the point that I just inserted up to the previous point. So I can change the direction or shape of that curve based on these arrows. And now when I let go, those arrows are placed. And notice now when I go to make my next point that it's also affected by the arrows that I just created. So if I was to put a point right here and not click and drag, I'll just click. You can see that because I used a click and drag method on this point, I have a curve before it and I have a curve after it. Now if I just simply left click, I get corner points. If I click and drag, I get curved points. And they don't have to be big dramatic curves. They can just be very small amounts of curve to get your line to look smooth. And if I want to finish the object, I can right click, or if I want to close the object, I just join the two ends together and then right click. And I've created an object. Now the main difference here is I actually created each one of the points that it takes to create this object. So I have a little bit more control over what shape I'm creating when I use this tool versus the Freehand tool, because I actually insert each individual shape point or node, as they are sometimes called. So that's the Bezier tool, and again, I just left click to get corner points, and I left click and drag to get curved points, and right click to finish making the shape. So that's the Bezier tool. Now the third tool on the toolbar is called the Outline tool. And if I choose the Outline tool, and again I'm just gonna kind of move down a little bit. This time I'm just gonna left click, and I get a line that follows my point. And what you'll find is that if I click again, I automatically get a rounded point. So it's a little bit different than the Bezier. I can click and drag to control the Bezier angles, but if I do nothing and I just left click up and down, I get a curved line. It automatically curves. And in fact, if I want to, I can hold down my control key to get, did you see what happened when I put the control key down? I get the degrees around a ray that I could use to help put my points in a specific. This is actually something, this holding down your control key or your alt key, I'll put a segment in about those and what they do exactly, because you can use them in a lot of the different tools when you're holding down the keys. So holding down the control key gives me these radiuses to click to. Holding down the shift key will give me the ability to get a corner point. So if I want, when I use the outline tool and I want corners, I have to hold the shift key while I'm digitizing. And when I let go of the shift key and then I digitize, I'm back to the curve points. So it's very similar to the Bezier tool. The difference is with the Bezier tool, I automatically get corner points and I have to click and drag to get a rounded point. Whereas here I automatically get a curved point that's also have the ability to click and drag to control the curves. But if I want to get a corner point, I have to hold the shift key down. And the other kind of key, I showed the control key, is the alt key. And the alt key basically gets your mouse to snap to the grid shape. So the lines on my XY coordinates lines, basically there's a grid that's behind my workspace and it'll snap to the lines of the grid. So holding the alt key down will get it to snap to those lines. And if I just let go, then it doesn't snap to the lines of my grid. So if I right click, I'll finish making the shape. If I right click again, I finish making the shape, the group of shapes, and I could start a new one if I wanted to. So 3 different tools. You may want to review the video and and play with them and try and become comfortable, because it's very important with creating your own designs to be able to make your own shapes. Now, there was one more tool on this toolbar, and that's the individual crystal tool. So create crystal shape. Basically, when I choose that tool, and if I was to zoom in a little bit more closely, you'll see that my mouse has now got a crystal attached to the end of the mouse, and literally if I just left click, I place a crystal, and if I want a crystal here, left click again, and so every time I click, I insert a new crystal, and then when I'm done inserting crystals, I right click to let go of the tool, same as always. And so now each crystal becomes an individually selectable, whoops, I zoomed in too close, shape that I could click and move those crystals if I wanted to. And what we're going to continue to talk a little bit more about crystals, but you can see that I've created a crystal, an individual crystal, and I'll have the ability to change things like the palette, and the size, and the color and shape of the crystal. But because they're individual crystals, I don't have some of the other choices that we'll look at a little bit further on in the video, like creating a crystal array or having a pattern where we fill in a shape with crystals. This is just the tool that says, I'd like to plop a crystal down here, and I'll have one here, and I'll have one here. So your individual kind of crystal tool. So all those tools are found here with the Freehand drawing tool, Bezier tool, the outline tool, and the crystal tool. And yeah, that's my segment on creating shapes using those 4 tools.